Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering news video. In today's video, we are taking a look at the year ahead and what Magic the Gathering just announced for Standard in 2022. Now today they had a huge event covering lots of different topics from, art series, side products, the Netflix TV show. I'm not really going to talk about those, but they also released a ton of information about a ton of different sets, so much so that I'm breaking this video up into two parts. So in this video, we're going to talk just about the sets coming to Standard, and then the next video, which is actually probably going to be bigger, we're going to be talking about the side products, such as Commander Legends 2, a new unset, a new Double Masters, and more. So we're going to talk about all of that in the next video, but in this one, we're going to be talking about the 4 sets coming to Standard in 2022. Either way, let's just jump into this with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. This has been a set that has been kind of floating around for a while now. Wizards of the Coast registered some domain names for it, and so people were kind of able to tell that it was coming. But essentially, let's read about what people, or what they said about it on Daily MTG and in the reveal stream. First up, a trip that was years in the making. The feudal past of Kamigawa sets the stage for the far-off future we return to with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Filled with high-tech delight and homages to fan favorites, Kamigawa Neon Destiny comes to stores in the first quarter of 2022. So that is kind of their description of it on the page, but from the stream, we were able to get a little bit more. So for instance, it is going to be 2,000 years in the future. So 2,000 years since the last Kamigawa block, which is a really long time in the future. Kamigawa, a lot of people like the world, weren't a huge fan of the mechanics is how I understand it. I was not playing at the time, but essentially it's going to be a new take on it while still adhering to some of what you loved about the original. It is going to be neon ninjas and cyberpunk, as you can probably tell by the art and name. There's going to be a new planeswalker named Kaido, and there's going to be a, quote, other mysterious planeswalker that we have seen before leading it. So I thought something maybe along the lines of the Wanderer. Every time they say, quote, a mysterious planeswalker, my brain goes to Wanderer right away from War of the Spark, and that could definitely make sense, so we'll have to see. And then they said that there are going to be all new mechanics, and maybe they didn't mean it in this way, but it made it sound like there is not going to be any returning mechanics from the original Kamigawa block. All right, so what do I think about this? I'm pretty excited for it. If we look at the winter set, a lot of the time it is not my favorite set. I mean, Theros Beyond Death and Kaldheim, for me, were both fine sets, but they're a little bit more on the tame side. This seems very different for Magic. Normally, spring is their time to do kind of weird stuff, and the next year will be no exception. We'll get into that in a second. But like Strixhaven, War of the Spark, stuff like that, Ikoria, they were all very extreme and like exciting. And then the set before it was always kind of just a tame set. And part of that is that the spring set is in Standard for the least amount of time. But this is like, cyberpunk, sci-fi, instead of that normal fantasy theme that we see. And so it's interesting to see that in that slot that's typically more reserved for those simpler sets. So it'll be interesting to see how this set comes along. Again, this will be coming out first quarter 2022, which I actually didn't think it would. And maybe it will almost definitely be later first quarter, because this year we have 5 standard sets. And that I figured it was because they're fixing their schedule. Because right now, I don't know if you noticed, but the, basically winter set, the spring set, and the summer set are all like very close to each other. And then the gap between the summer set and the fall set is a little bit bigger. And then the gap between the fall set and the winter set is huge. Like if you look at the Mastery Pass, we've had Mastery Pass with like 140 levels on them. And we've also had some with like 70. And so I figured they were going to use this extra set this year to just make it, a consistent like 90 days between each set or something along those lines. And that could definitely still happen. But you'll notice something, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we get to the rotated set. So this will be the second set in, quote, new standard. The first one, the third set in, quote, new standard, because we're going to have Innistrad Midnight Hunt, Innistrad Crimson Vow, and then this one. And so typically we get up to 8 sets and then rotate. So what is that 8th set that we'd be getting up to? That's Streets of New Capenna? Whatever it is, this is a very, very interesting one, and this will be the 8th set in Standard if I'm not doing my Mental math wrong. So we'll have Zendikar Rising, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, Kamigawa, Neon Dynasty, and the Streets of New Capenna. And so this will be the 8th set, meaning where normally the summer set is the 8th set, this one will be the 8th set, meaning that in my opinion, next year we are going to see rotation in the summer rather than the fall, which is a little bit of an interesting change. But yeah, this will kind of be the last set to be introduced before rotation, unless they change how rotation works. So just keep that in mind. The whole schedule of this is going to be a little bit different. But let's see what they have to say. Trailing after our trip to Kamigawa like a detective with a gumption, the following standard release takes us to the streets of New Capenna, a city with special significance to Elspeth, built by angels, but now run by 3-color demon crime families. We'll race through the streets of New Capenna in the second quarter of 2022. So essentially, this is almost like a guild set. So there is going to be 5 3-color crime families, each of which has their own mechanic. And it's going to be a gangster / organized crime themed set. So, you know, those tropes, expect that in plain form. And it's still going to be fantasy, just kind of, so there's not going to be all humans. Obviously, it's demon crime families, so you can expect other creatures in there as well. But again, this is something that's very different. You know, a School of Magic, I believe, in a fantasy setting. You know, organized crime feels a little less fantasy. Neon Destiny feels a little less fantasy. And so we're starting to see this move towards it. Either way, I'm excited. I always enjoy getting to see new planes and new sets. It always sucks when we only get to have one set on that plane. But you'll see in these next two that we are actually getting a little bit more similar to Innistrad with multiple planes or multiple sets in a row on the same plane. Either way, I'm excited for this one. I love guild-based, sets, and so this will be no exception, hopefully. Next, we have Dominaria United. This was another one that was leaked, just because people know what to look for returning planes compared to new ones. And so this is going to be our return to Dominaria, the plane that housed so many stories in the beginning days of Magic, and then we went back to, on the set, Dominaria. So we're going to go to Dominaria United. So Dominaria holds a special place in Magic across the lore of the game and in the hearts of fans around the world. With so much story and decades of Magic history packed into one plane, our next visit with Dominaria United is the perfect place to kick off our 30th anniversary celebration. You'll be able to enjoy the original high fantasy Magic setting again in the third quarter of 2022. So this will be the summer set, which typically is a core set, but you're going to notice we don't have a core set this year. And so this will be 2 years in a row without a core set, which is kind of interesting. Maybe they realized, oh, Forgotten Realms is going to do better than a core set because, people don't like the quote boringness of core sets. There are some people who do like core sets, but generally they're just not the most exciting thing in the world. And, when they brought them back, they were better than they were, but they still just weren't my favorite, at least. So I'm a little bit excited to see them go. But yeah, so we'll be returning to Dominaria with Dominaria United in summer 2022. This will just be your typical Dominaria set. But what won't be your typical Dominaria set? The Brothers' War. This is another Dominaria-based kind of plane, but let's just read what they have to say about it. While Magic's history stretches back 30 years, the lore of Dominaria itself is much longer. Returning to a pivotal story of Dominaria's and Magic's history, what started as a feud between Urza and Mishra erupted into an all-out war that set into motion the future of the plane and the multiverse itself. Through the lens of Dominaria's locations, characters, and victims of the conflict, we'll see a plane-spanning conflict escalate with artifacts, giant mechs, and beyond in The Brothers' War, arriving to stores everywhere in the fourth quarter of 2022. So this will be our fall set. But at this point, we would have already rotated. So, kind of the newer set. So Zendikar, Kaldheim, Strixhaven, and those will not be there, sorry. So it's a little bit weird to think about because typically this would be the time of year that we see rotation, but we would already have rotation happened. Either way, pretty excited about this one. This is one of those Magic sets that goes back into the past and kind of tells a story there, which I think is a really interesting concept. Typically, we see things go in timeline order unless it's a core set. And with this, we're able to kind of go back in time and have a set based around it. So that's a pretty exciting thing, and I think it opens up a lot more storytelling for the future. But yeah, that is it in terms of the 4 sets coming for standard. Now, if we're talking about not standard, we have a ton more, but yeah, those were the 4 standard sets. I want to know what you guys think about all of this in the comments down below. Which one are you most excited for? If I was giving mine, I think I am most excited for the Brothers War, just because it's something like it's still in the fantasy theme. It is stretching a little bit because it's so artifact themed and, war quote unquote based. But I think that it'll be an interesting experience to see something that happened so far in the past, but in modern Magic set design in standard. So I think I'm most excited for that one, which is the one we actually know the least about. Or I guess Dominaria United we know less about. But either way, I'm just really excited to see that. Let me know what you guys are excited for in the comments down below, and stay tuned for my other video talking about all of the new supplemental sets coming out soon. So see you guys.